All right. Welcome to another episode of Raising Education. This episode is called Why Teachers Leave the Classroom and How to Get Them to Stay. Today, I have a special guest, Diamond Malone-Gilbert. She is a good friend of mine, but also an excellent educator. And those of you who follow my writing, you know that I am very picky about who I say is a good educator. She just recently got hired at Circle City Prep. She is their manager of literacy and early interventions. So this is Diamond. And I,
Hey.
and I want to tell you guys how we actually met. So most of you guys know that for the majority of my career, I was an English language arts teacher. So for the first 8 years, that's all I did was teach middle school English. And then I taught a year of high school English. And then I decided to do a transition. And I did 2 transitions at one time. I don't necessarily recommend doing 2 major transitions, but it all worked out. I transitioned from the middle school level down to elementary. And then I transitioned from being an English teacher to an English learner teacher, a language learner teacher, because I had got my master's in language education. I added on that endorsement to my license, and I really wanted to go do this. And we ended up getting hired at the same school. And long story short, we ended up co-teaching together, and I co-taught with her 3rd grade class, her first year in the classroom, and I co-taught both reading and math. So I'm not just saying that I think she's a great educator based on like her resume or based on talking to her a few times. I'm talking about this is eyewitness accounts.
Yes.
Like this is a good educator. So I brought her on here today because we've had some similar experiences and we both have been in situations where we have transitioned to different schools. And this is a topic, this is not a new topic, but I think this is a topic we need to continue having conversations about because until we can start retaining teachers in the classroom, we're going to keep having these issues and the issues affect our students. So can you talk a little bit about what actually gets teachers to walk out the door or what has gotten you to say, hey, this is not a good fit or gotten you to transition from a school?
Yeah. So I think there's a variety of reasons why teachers might leave the classroom. So just based off my personal experience, the first time I left the classroom, it's basically because I felt very alone and I felt that the climate and culture of the school was pretty toxic. So I was a brand new teacher. I had a new team. I went in really excited. I felt like I was prepared, read my, first 6 weeks of school. I was ready to go. But after some time, I felt like my team was really not supportive of some of the things that I wanted to do. A lot of the things that they wanted to do was like, well, we've done this before, so this is how you should do it. And if you know me, that's nice. I will do that, but I also have some ideas and I think about my own specific classroom, what's best for them, what's going to work for their needs. So I didn't feel like they were really supportive of me as a new teacher, and I felt really alone a lot of the time. And I also didn't feel like at the time the principal was respected very much by a lot of the staff. I felt like I've seen a lot of blatant disrespect towards her. People just didn't seem happy to be there. And having that around you, especially coming in as a new teacher, it's really tough. And luckily, I had one person on my team that I did feel like I can go to and relate to a little bit, but it was difficult to relate to this person because they had already been teaching for a while. So at the time when I was kind of deciding, like, I don't know if I really should stay or if I am ready to go, the advice I was given was basically just kind of push through it, work through it. And I had already felt like I'd done a year already and I'd pushed through it already, but I still didn't think it was going to be enough for me. Like I didn't feel like mentally I could just do it. I had you, of course. So you were a nice little bright spot in my day. I knew I could bounce ideas off of you, but I only had you for parts of the day. So I wasn't able to really have someone feeling like I had someone in my corner at all times. So I ultimately decided like it was best for me to just leave for my own mental state. And it was tough. It's tough not only for me as a teacher, it was tough for the kids too. And that's who I really worried about the most. And I feel like sometimes that's what happens when people think about quitting. You get guilt tripped. It's kind of like, oh, well, you're leaving the students behind. You're giving up on them. I'm not giving up on them. That's not what it is. But I can't be a good enough teacher for them if I'm not doing what's best for me either. So that's ultimately why I ended up leaving. The climate and culture of a school makes a big difference in how your teachers feel about staying there. You can be going through a rough patch, but if the climate and culture is fine, you feel like there's some sense of hope. But if you feel like everyone there is really negative, you feel like you don't have that support that you need, then you don't feel like you can stay. So I think that it's important to do what you feel is best. And then just in addition to that, just not feeling heard, teachers might leave for that reason. There were times, like I said, with my team, at least, I didn't feel like I was heard. And even when I talked to the principal at the time about why I wanted to leave, I explained it. I explained some of my frustrations. And then it was still like, okay, yeah, this is how I felt. Because I was like, okay, but what can I do to help you, to get you to stay? And the thing is, you shouldn't be reactive now. You should be thinking about those things in general. Like, what can I do to make sure my teachers want to be here? That should be something you think in the forefront, and not afterwards when I'm already done, I'm spent, and I feel like I can't take it anymore. So that was my primary reason for leaving the first time. And like I said, it was really rough because I had already built really good relationships with my kids. It was tough. I still tried to keep some communication going, even though I had left and went to a different school. But ultimately, I also knew I had to kind of stop that because it wasn't going to be good for me or for them. So.
No, I agree. Since we're talking about the same school, it was interesting because for me, I had just came to that school, and the school I had been there for 5 years. And the only reason I left that school was because I wanted to do something different. It wasn't that I was having issues at the school. And then there were, and I will say the school I left, I was the 14th educator that school year to leave, and there were more that left after me, but I didn't leave because of the principal or some of the reasons other people left. My sole reason, and my principal knew this, was I want to work with English learners. I want to try to be this type of teacher. I want to do that. So coming into the school that we were at and feeling like, oh, I'm going to do a new start, and then walking into this culture that was toxic. And granted, we weren't the only Black teachers in the school. But it was a very toxic situation. I would agree that people did not respect the principal. They were blatant. Like some of the things that people said at staff meetings back to the principal, I just coming from the school I came from was like, you would have been done. You would have been asked to leave. Like you wouldn't even been allowed to even sit there. First of all, you wouldn't even got to the point where you open your mouth like that. But I'm just like, how? So if they're talking to you like that, they're going to talk to other people like that. And it's just really toxic. And I think the thing I regret the most is that the first year I was there, I highly thought about leaving that summer because, I had an opportunity to go somewhere else. And then the principal's like, oh, it'll get better. Just push through. And I'm like, you know what? I can do this. That was my 9th year. I said, I'm going to go into year 10. I'm going to stay. And people started to leave. And you were one of the people that left before I left. Yeah. And I remember, and I told you this, I remember the principal coming down to my office asking me what I could do to get you to stay. And she was in tears. And I was just like, see, this is the thing. And to me, it was jarring because my husband, when he left his first job that he had left it for 5 years, they sent a Black person down to his cubicle to convince him to stay. And I'm like, see, this isn't the answer. You go get the Black girl to go talk to the other Black lady to get her to stay. Like, you need to go fix the issues that got her in this situation where she's going to leave. And for me, you talked about like how I was like your bright spot, but when you left, I was like, dang, I ain't got time to talk to you. Like, you know what? And then one of the opportunities I had presented itself that summer, they were like, hey, are you still interested? And I was just like, look, I'm going to leave. I think the hardest thing for me was leaving because I left in probably towards the middle of September. Yeah. I had never left a job during the school year. So that's the part that I felt real guilt about. But on the other hand, my next opportunity was really good. And I had a great principal. The culture was great. And so for me, I'm like, would I have, if I would have stayed just to tough it out for the quote unquote students, would I have been a good educator? Would I have brought this type of thing? Or would I have been putting up with all these type of situations? Because some of the people that were difficult on your team, they weren't easy for me to work with. Right. And so we kind of started alluding to this, but what can admin do to get teachers to stay? What are real tangible things like speaking about that principal or any principal? What could a principal do to meaningfully get you to stay, or if you're thinking about like going out the door?
I mean, the biggest thing for me is really I feel like, first of all, principals need to know their staff, and not just, and especially because I feel like when new teachers come in, sometimes I feel like it's kind of like, oh, well, they're new, they don't really know. And it's like, that's when you need the most support, to be honest. Like, I should feel like there's some sort of trust to where I can come to you and I can express when I'm going through some sort of challenge with my team or whatever the case may be, and need some sort of assistance. But when you don't feel like there's that trust built, or you don't feel like your principal listens to you, that's when you just disconnect and you're just like, you're kind of just doing what you want to do at that point. You do what you're supposed to do, but you also are doing whatever you think is best, even though your principal should be there to kind of lead and guide you. And then, yeah, you can rely on your team, but I really feel like a principal's job, part of a principal's job in retaining those teachers, is making sure they know what it is that their teachers need, as well, to best support them. And then another thing is, I also feel like it would be great if there was more leadership as far as like being able to show what it is that you want the school culture and climate to look like. Be a part of that. Like, don't make it to be like, oh, this is what the teachers are supposed to do. Like, here's how you improve school culture and climate. Let's have all these discussions and PDs and whatever about culture and climate, and you're not really exhibiting those same things that you want the teachers to do. So I feel like that's definitely something that's, I think, is easy to do, but maybe it's not, because it's a whole mindset shift you kind of have too. Because you might be thinking, well, no one else has complained about it, and that's also the thing. A lot of people don't voice their opinions to their principals or certain things. It's just kind of like, we have these conversations, side conversations as teachers, and it's not really vocalized to the principal, and they might be thinking they're doing fine. But it needs to be brought to their attention too. Like, when we have needs, like, we need to be able to express that. But again, you can't do that if there's no trust.
No, I think, and I think you brought up a good point about the fact that sometimes people don't bring up how they're feeling. And we also forget that there are benefactors of toxic cultures. If you're the teacher, you're the group of teachers that are creating this toxic culture, you benefit for the culture staying that way. Because what happens is the teachers are like, I don't have to live like this. I can get another job somewhere else. They leave. The other teachers, they stay. And so the next cohort of people that come in to fill those roles, those people just keep going on. And so one of the things I would even add to it, like, administrators have to deal with those people. You see a lot of administrators just kind of like, well, they'll kind of talk to them or say, can you work a little bit better with so-and-so? But they don't really ever address the issue that is causing people to walk out the door. And I agree with your point on trust and really getting to know. When I went to my next job after that school, that's when my boys were in preschool. And one of my boys were having a lot of trouble. And so I had to be off of work and go to the school. And the principal was like, as long as you get this stuff done, don't worry about it. Because you do get some anxiety when you have personal issues and you know it's going to affect like you being at work or your job. You have fear that the principal's going to come after you. And the principal will know you good. And so even though that situation was hard trying to manage work and trying to manage what's going on with my kids, I didn't have the extra burden of the principal coming after me or the principal allowing colleagues to come after me or say things. Now I was pretty transparent about the situation too. So that made me feel, but the previous school, had that been going on, I don't think I would have gotten that support, which would have been hard. I know at your next school, your next principal, was a woman of color. How do you think that helps educators stay in the classroom, in particular Black educators?
I mean, you definitely feel like you have someone you can relate to now. So even if you don't necessarily talk about those things explicitly, you kind of know, like, in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, we're here. So, I mean, it's just kind of that comfort, feeling like you have some sort of group to be a part of, or like, yes, you might get along with your colleagues and you might create some other friendships, but it is nice to have another person of color that you can go to that can relate to some of the issues that you might be going through. But some of the problems that you might also that you could face is that they might be numb to some of those issues that you might be facing too. So it could be another thing where it's like, no, I understand. I had that experience too. And it's like, we relate that way, but it's like, yeah, but what do I do besides just get over it or just keep doing me? So that's another thing that we have to talk about is, okay, how do we vocalize to other people, like, this is an issue and it's not necessarily my issue, it's your issue too, because it's not only affecting us working together as a staff, but it's affecting how you're reaching our kids too.
No, that's a really good point, because my career's been pretty diverse. I've had two principals who were of color but weren't Black. And then I had two principals that were Black. And then the rest of my principals were white. So I've had principals from different cultures and different backgrounds. When I've had principals who are from different backgrounds, I will say that I felt that there was an importance on students being seen in the curriculum and things like that. But what you just said about like, it's kind of like toughen up, kid, you know, you got to push through it, or, you know, get better. Well, so-and-so's like that. And I think a lot of times we feel like if I'm Black and my principal is Black, you know, they're going to make sure I don't have these experiences. And sometimes they ignore the problems just like the white administrator did. So it's like, yeah, they may let you vent to them about the situation. They may even say, yeah, I've been there, done that. But sometimes it's almost like, well, look at where I am now. I made it to the top. I made it to this role. So if you just keep pushing, you know, if you want to do this too, you know, you can keep making it. I'm just like, no, I need you to actually do things. So thinking about, stay on this track about like Black teachers, what do districts need to do to recruit and retain Black teachers? Because it seems like some districts are able to recruit, but then the retention part just kind of falls apart.
I think one thing is I think at this point, a lot of people know like schools are trying to recruit more teachers of color. So like it's very apparent. But the issue that I feel like teachers of color, when they come in, that they're running into is that the staff, once they get there, they're not it's not necessarily saying that they're racist, because that's what I feel like a lot of people think. People are saying like, oh, I'm not racist. I never said you were. Calm down. But it's that they're not really prepared for that change, really. Like they don't know how to adjust to these new teachers of color coming in, how to support them, or knowing what it is that they need. And sometimes, like I will say, like my first 2 to 3 years or so, 2 to 3 years, I was okay with just being like the main one, I guess, really. But at times, like you definitely feel like you need to have some sort of group to rely on, like, or that you can at least just go and vent to. I don't feel like in the district I was in that they were like, I didn't really know any of the other teachers of color. Like with me being out of the classroom a little bit now, like I feel like I'm just now starting to navigate through and like see like, oh, there are a lot more of us out there. I had no idea. Nobody told me. So the only time I would run into them or see them is when it was like some cultural responsive training or some sort of diversity initiative. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, that shouldn't be the first time I'm really seeing or talking to these people. You know, we could utilize each other. Like, I mean, think about what would happen if we collectively had a group where we can go to, like, even if it was just maybe some like thing on Fridays that we did where we met up or whatever. And I guess, you know, districts might assume that we would do that ourselves, but not necessarily. We're not always thinking, you know, to do that. So it'd be nice if we had some sort of group, because from that group, we could easily talk about some of the issues we're facing and how to tackle those, and it would come naturally, as opposed to us trying to force everybody together. Let's talk about how we can, you know, retain teachers. What can we do to reach our students, and you know, whatever the case may be. So yeah, I mean, I feel like having some sort of group would definitely be helpful.
It's cool, like mentorship, a little bit within those groups, because you would have educators of different levels of experience. But something that you said really stood out to me. You said the first time we see each other shouldn't be on some cultural responses committee.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I was in districts, even the district we're talking about, I would choose to be on a committee, and then I would look around and like I'm one of the few people that look like me. Right. And so a lot of times districts will approach you to be on like a cultural responsive committee. They'll even ask you to give the presentation, you know, but when it comes to using my expertise, maybe in my subject area, you don't get sought out. It's more like, oh, can I join this committee? Or they open it up. But when they notice that not all groups of teachers are represented in the district doesn't make an extra effort to go out and say, hey, I don't know, we got 30 Black teachers in the district and there's only one Black teacher on the math committee. And then we 5 of those teachers teach math. We need to reach out to make sure we are having all these voices heard. And if the district didn't do a group like you said, at least that would be a way that I could connect, because I would go to these committees. That would meet, oh, hey, Shante, can I get your email address? So I'm exchanging information just naturally because I'm in proximity to these people. So if I was in proximity to people that look like me, I would do the same thing I would do if the room was full of white teachers. I would exchange my information, say, hey, maybe we should hook up or have coffee or something. So I really think the district either A, has to be intentional about putting these groups into place, and B, the groups they already have in the place, they have to be intentional about making sure the groups represented in the district are a part of those groups, because a lot of those things could happen naturally. But with the school days, like bam, bam, I got to do this, this, and this, and this. So you may not even have the energy or the bandwidth to be like, let me see if there's any Black teachers that teach English in the district so I can go talk to them. Like, don't have the time for that. So I think that's one of the things that we really need to do. But you talked about taking a break from the classroom. So the next school you went to, some people know it happened to be the school that my sons go to. And I was sad that you left the school that we were at, because like I said, I didn't have that person to also talk to, because even though you were fresh out of college, because I remember when they introduced you, they talked about how your face was on like the IU brochure, and I'm like, okay, I must be doing something. Let me pay attention, right? But when you've been teaching at that time, that was my 9th year in education. It was nice to have a breath of fresh air of someone who just came out of school, had these new ideas. I'm like, oh, maybe I should try that. Oh, look at how she did it this way. So even like re-energized me to think about what I was doing in a different way. So not having that, but I was sad. But I was excited because I'm like, oh, it's my kids' school. Well, my kids they were only in preschool at this time. But I was also saddened because I ended up taking a break from education. Like, I'm gonna tell y'all, I put in some work, and it was selfish. Like, you have the one thing, like, I think this is an excellent teacher. This person is my friend, but like, I was out there in the portable. I was helping with getting the classroom library.
Yeah, you did.
Email. Okay, she said we gotta do this. What do you think about this? I said, well, just answer it like this. Talking, and I'm like, and then she's like, well, Shante, I think. I'm like, no, because I haven't met you yet. You cannot leave. Like, this whole, like, you don't understand. When they get to this grade, they're gonna be in your class. Like, you just got shot. But it's okay, because like you said, you are my friend, so I have to respect the fact you got to take care of yourself. So talk about leaving education for a bit and like leaving the classroom. What are like the benefits to that? Because there are teachers who feel like I need to take a break for a minute and maybe come back. And then what are like the cons to like walking away and taking a break?
Yeah. So as far as taking a break, it was a little scary at first because actually, no, it wasn't. So let me just kind of go through this. So at first when I left, I had reached my threshold. I was over it. I didn't want to teach anymore. I didn't care. I was just over it. I was spent. I felt like I had, like, with me in the classroom, and I'm just speaking for myself, like, I go all in, like, for my kids. I might not always be best at responding to emails, but not with parents. With parents, yes. But with like teachers stuff, like, I am all in it for my kids, doing what's best for them. That's just where my headspace is. And I make myself indisposable to parents. So it's like 24/7. I didn't mind if I got a dojo message, I was going to answer it. I didn't mind if I got an email in the middle of the school day. Let me try to let me check to make sure everything's okay. I made sure after school, if I needed to, I would stay, doing whatever I needed to do for them. And after some time, it got really draining doing that same thing year after year after year. And it was just like, I reached my wit's end because I had a particular parent who pushed me farther than I ever expected a parent really would. And emotionally, it was so draining to me. I was at the point, and I had never done that before. So it was really weird that I allowed someone to get me that far. But I was at a point where it's like, I literally just could not take it. I was like, I can do less work and go make more money teaching somewhere, or not teaching, but working somewhere else. Maybe I'm not meant to be a teacher. I'm not really good at this. I second guessed myself about everything, and I just spiraled. In addition to just other things going on that school year, it was just really stressful. Plus planning a wedding, like, I was over it. So done. So then, I leave. And I think the grass is about to be greener, and it turns out it's really not, because everything that I did, I literally related it right back to teaching. Like, my mindset is literally just in teacher mode all the time. Like when I see kids in the store and they're acting up, like give them that stare, like there's just different things that I just realized, like I'm meant to be in the classroom. Like I feel the most fulfilled in the classroom. Now, other people probably knew that about me, especially like my close friends, especially my close teacher friends. They're like, okay, you can take a break, but you sure? And I was sure at the time, but obviously I was wrong. So I am glad that I took a break because it allowed me to really get back to what it is that I love and making sure that I'm more cognizant now of my teacher burnout. I know where my threshold is. I know what it is that I need to do to take care of myself better mentally. And I think it really did take for me to leave for me to get that, because otherwise I would still be at school till midnight and beyond, and then go back to school the next day and act like nothing ever happened and just kept going and running off caffeine and been fine. But that's not healthy. And I think sometimes we forget as teachers to take care of ourselves. And that's exactly what I was doing. So that was a pro of me leaving, let alone just me, like I said, kind of figuring out my own self. And then the biggest con is coming back in. Like I've been paying attention and to some of the changes that are happening, but like there's a lot. Like when you leave for a school year, let alone two, there's a lot of different changes that happen. So you catching up with curriculum, the different discussions that are happening, what are the big changes? I mean, now you got this pandemic going on. It's like trying to juggle and figure out what's going on with everything. So like I kind of get my little teacher kick when I'm doing my tutoring session. So I tutor K-5 right now with reading and math. And so I'm working on doing some interventions with a lot of those kids to kind of get them back where they need to be academically, filling in some gaps. So that's nice because I'm able to talk to parents from other school districts and at least kind of know what they're doing. But you can stay in touch as much as you can, but it's just so much. Like in districts all over, of course, change and are doing different things. So that's the biggest con, is making sure you're keeping up with the different changes.
No, I agree. I haven't ever left the classroom for like a extended period of time, minus my unexpected crazy maternity leave that just went, involved me being in the hospital for 4 months. So that was not planned. But even with that, coming back from that unexpected extended leave and then switching schools, I would say some of the pros is like, if it was toxic, you left that toxicity behind. Right. Some of the cons are that some of the issues are at every school. So you have to figure out, like, I have to get a plan. I think that's my biggest frustration when there's issues and the principal or the administrator doesn't help you, because like, this is an issue. Like if I go somewhere else, I have to have the skills in my toolkit to be able to deal with this. How do I respond? And even if you respond appropriately, something still may not go well. So I think, and then the other pro would be like, you get to set up your new norms, right? Mm-hmm. So like, even with my current job, I walked into my current job, and one of the things I had to tell people is like, I don't have email on my phone. And I actually took a work email off of my phone. When was that? Back in 2015. It was a minute ago. So it's been about 5 years. So I said, if you expect to send me an email and you think I'm going to read it on my cell phone because my cell phone's in my pocket, no. I will respond to emails when I'm on my computer. When I go home, I'm mom, I'm wife. I will check my emails once or twice before I go to bed, and I'm done. And so even setting those boundaries in place, and even little things like, I don't argue or debate an email. I'll send you one email back, talk to me in person. So a lot of things I had to learn from other administrators, and I got myself mentors outside of my school. That's essentially what I had to end up doing, because first of all, trust is an issue. I've had situations where I thought I could trust a colleague and they sure threw me under the bus, or said, well, Shantae said this. I'm like, that's not, I confided in you because I needed to get this off my chest. I wasn't going to do anything. I was just saying, I'm frustrated, I'm angry. And now you told somebody. So it makes you feel like you can't talk to somebody. So I got mentors outside of the school just to help me. And that was one of the tips they gave me. So I think that's really important. So we're talking about like leaving your job. Do you think teachers should be resigning right now during this coronavirus pandemic? Is this the time, if you're having all these issues we've been talking about, is this the time to worry about yourself and be selfish?
I mean, I don't think it's selfish. That's the thing too. It's like, is it selfish to take care of yourself? Like, I don't know. So I feel like that's a question that it's going to be different for each teacher that's kind of going through that. So, I mean, if you really feel like right now you cannot take it and it could be because of the changes, then do what you think is best. So I don't necessarily want to say yes or no, because I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what their school, culture and climate's like. I don't know what it is that they're going through, because it could be something personal that's kind of spilling over into their work life. But just like I said before, do what is best for you. So if you feel like mentally you can't take it or emotionally or whatever the case may be, then yes, leave. But I don't necessarily think that it's completely the right thing to do either, just because, I mean, we're all creating a new normal. Like, no one really knows what they're doing. Kids need stability more now than ever, with all the changes happening. So if they're already changing their new normal from school, their parent is now like their school teacher for the most part, like at least at home. And then it's like you are leaving and now they're kind of in limbo again, like they already are spiraling. So again, I worry about that, but you have to also think about what's best for yourself. So
And I'm kind of like you. I don't have an answer because I think about the teachers I've been talking to, because I talk to teachers here in Indy and then I talk to teachers across the United States and even abroad. And everybody has a different story. So based on hearing that person's story, I'm like, and I always try to be careful about giving people advice on what to do, because I don't want to say, well, Shantae told me it all messed up. I would say things like, if I were in that situation, that would be challenging for me to continue. However, you have to do what's best for you. But when I hear some of these teachers' story, I'm like, I couldn't take that. I would leave if I was in that situation. So I hear the other side, but I'm also practical like my mom and dad. Don't leave a job if you don't got another job. So I also think if your back's against the wall, you want to put yourself in a situation where you're able to be hired somewhere else. And I know we are talking about like why teachers leave the classroom and how to get them to stay. Do you have any suggestions for what teachers should do if they're on the fence right now and they don't want to leave because of all the issues we talked about with kids maybe falling behind? Like, what should you do if you're in a situation, and it may not just be the coronavirus pandemic, you're in a situation where you're truly on the fence about, should I leave or should I stay? What ownership or responsibility is it on the teacher to try to do something about it? And then what could or should they do?
Figure out what it is that you want to do next. So do your own research. Because I mean, you never know. Maybe it could be that you go back to school for some reason. Maybe it's that you figure out where another school is that might be better for you, or maybe there's a whole another trajectory for you. Like maybe instead of being a teacher, you should be a coach somewhere else. So just figure that out first before you quit. It took for me to leave to figure that out. But I mean, it's really up to you as far as like how your circumstances are. So if you're able to leave and kind of take that time to really explore, I encourage it. But if you're not, take your time. There's not necessarily a rush unless you feel like you absolutely cannot take it and you need to leave. But yeah, have that situated first before you just kind of jump ship.
And yeah, and I would say put some supports in place, such as taking care of yourself. I mean, some of the things I had to do when I became a literacy coach, which was the next job after I left the school we were at, I was like, I want to talk about literacy. This is going to be great. I'm going to get them on fire. We're going to move this data. And then I found out like 1/3 of my job as literacy coach. 1/3 was like, oh, you can't manage a classroom. That's why you can't teach. And the other third was like life coach, right? It was like helping people. And then it's that fine line. It's like when you're in conversation with parents and you can't say like a kid needs to be on medicine. You can't say go to the doctor, but you can say these are your options. So I found myself in a situation where I was like, it's okay, to take care of yourself, whether that is going to a doctor for your physical health or looking into like mental health services. I found myself saying that a lot. And I know we are so big right now on SEL and social emotional learning, but I think the biggest player in the game that we miss are teachers. You're having teachers give these lessons and you have teachers who are a hot mess and they are a wreck emotionally. And so sometimes, and then of course this is my opinion, sometimes teachers want to quit, but it's like, I feel like if you would take care of yourself, maybe you actually could stay. And so maybe the issue isn't so much the school, it's maybe like, I think about teachers I know, they were going through divorces. I had a teacher that was fighting with her grown kid. I had another teacher who kid was having trouble at school. And all those worries were showing up at work. So teachers doing fine otherwise, but that personal stuff was like seeping over to work, and they weren't dealing with it or addressing it. And when you get to the, and even to the point of like other people, like, I don't even see why this person having problems. So it wasn't, and then there's other schools where you're like, well, everybody's having problems. This culture is toxic. This person's doing this as if someone else. I do agree that you have to figure out what you want to do. And I've done a few different roles in education. And anytime I've switched roles, I have to figure out, like, do I want to do this? When I decided to be at a school administrator this school year, I'm like, do I really want to do this? What are the pros and cons? Do I want to keep doing this? Like right now, I have a goal, and I'm not saying nothing on this that my principal doesn't know, because sometimes I say something like, do the people at your school know? Yes, they know. And to be completely honest, I set this up in the interview. So this is like, they knew this up front. I said, I want to try this for 2 solid school years and then see if I want to continue on this. But I feel like I need to at least give it 2 school years of a good faith effort to see if this is what I want to do. And right now I'm at the point, and daggone it, this pandemic happened. So I feel like this is not a good, solid school year to really make a decision on. And I know I said 2 school years, but it's like there's a lot of pros and things I really like, and there are some things that are hard, and then it gets even harder when like you don't have that support. Like, I love my school, I like working there, but I still sometimes feel like I work at the school, but I may not be part of the school, if that makes sense. And so I've felt that before, and it's not like a positive or a negative against the school. It's sometimes you feel like I need to mesh myself more into the culture. I need to get meshed more into the school. And so that's one of the things I'm working on just this school year. But I also feel like that could be more of a me thing and not necessarily the school thing. So yeah, I think there's some accountability that you have to have on your part of like, is it the school or is it me? So you talked about being out of the classroom for a couple of school years. What type of things are you taking with you as you go back into the school system to help you avoid being in a situation where you feel like I have hit this wall of being burned out?
Yeah, so I think, again, like I said, like I know what my threshold is now. I know that I need to definitely not make myself available 24/7. You can send the messages 24/7. That doesn't mean I'm going to respond right away just because you sent it and you want me to. So there's that. I think I'm going to do a better job of and the thing is, okay, let me go back a little bit. The reason why I also made myself available that way and why I'm not going to do it again is because I, again, guilt tripped myself because I'm young. I just got married, but we don't have kids or anything. So I'm like, I should be at your disposal. Like that just makes sense. I should give you my time. This is what I love to do. Let me do it. But I know that that's not healthy for me. I know that's what sent me spiraling part of the way. I also know that as far as what I need to do as far as making change within a toxic climate culture, I definitely feel like I need to do a better job of speaking up. So I might have conversations on the side with some peers or people that I get really close to, which I'm really private. If you know me, I'm really private. So I don't like to disclose too much. So I keep a lot of my opinions to myself, unless it's something where I feel like, okay, no, I can't do this. This is not right for me. This is not right for kids. This is just not right. We're not doing it, or I'm not doing it. But I do think I need to do better about being more vocal. And that's something, especially with me going to a leadership role now, like I have to do that. So I want to make sure that I'm definitely listening to the staff more. If they don't feel like they're being heard, like I want to be that person because I've been in their shoes before. Like I know it's easier said than done, but that's something I want to be conscious of as well. It's just making sure like, okay, I'm here to help you get better. And here are some ways I think you can grow. But I also want to help strengthen some of the areas that they're already doing well in. And then just personally, like you said, there are going to be people that are probably going to come and just talk to me because they might, start to get comfortable with me, and they might just end up talking about things that I'm like, okay, but just hearing them out. People when you're at school, we're going through so many different things. So I think it's going to be definitely important for me to make sure I'm listening to other people, but also making sure I'm like, okay, this is all the time that I have to give you as far as you telling me everything and anything under the sun. So just taking time for myself is going to be important. So
I like listening. And I'll add on to that, even taking action, because I know right now, sometimes I feel like I'm middle management in my job because like I have some say in some situations and then like I don't have say. And so a lot of times and even when I was a literacy coach, you very much feel like you're middle management. You know, people want you to get this job done. How do you get this done and make teachers happy and make them feel valued, but also kind of meet what the principal wants? So I very much feel like that. But I also think you need those people to speak up. I was speaking to another administrator this week and we talked about how the best teams we have both been on are teams where people speak up. They feel safe that they can speak up, and then changes happen because they speak up. And it's not a yes team or a yes board. And I think the schools where I have been unable to thrive are the schools that want me to be a yes lady. And I just like there's a part of me like I always say to myself, Shante, is this the hill you want to die on? Like this is the conversation I have for myself because I know me. I know if I decide this is the hill I'm going to die for, I'm going to die on, I'm going to go hard for it. So there are days where I decide, like, do I speak up about this? If I do, what are the potential consequences? And I think that's the thing that frustrates me the most. And I think that's why teachers leave the classroom or leave a school, because you're like, why do I have to keep rationalizing this stuff? Why do I have to choose whether like, if I'm the only Black person on a committee or in a room and I want to speak up about the Black kids? The first thing I think about, oh, well, Shantae's saying that because she's Black and she's just going to get this perspective because she used to be a Black kid, you know, like, and it gets so frustrating. And then you get frustrated, like, why am I, the Black person, the one that has to say this about the Black kids? You white teachers who are also teaching Black kids, why aren't you speaking up? And so those are the places where, like, if I'm in a school and I speak up and say those things and people are making side comments about it, the principal squashes it and don't allow that stuff to happen and say, no, when we have these meetings at the school, at this meeting, it stays here. We're not doing text message change. We're not doing this stuff. That makes me feel emotionally safe. And I have to feel, and you know me, I am not a very, like, I'm not a crier. I'm not, but I still want to feel like safe because you get to a point where you're just choking down frustration. You're choking down anger. And like, I had a relative who good relative, but the relative got to a point where they swung a piece of wood at someone. And the person was saying some stuff that was like racist and inappropriate. And that person didn't get fired, but they got put in a situation where they had to resign, right? And there's a part of me, like, not just because that person is my relative and that's in my blood to fight or nothing like that, but there's a part of me that's like, if I stay in this situation, will I lay hands on somebody? And I'm like,
do it.
And I think to myself, like I say, no, Shante, you won't do that. You're not going to go to jail. Like, you say all this stuff, but there are things that we all have done in our life that we regret, that we thought we would have never done. And so when teachers start feeling like I may do something out of pocket that I would have never done before, I walk out the door. And so when I think about what people can do to get teachers to stay in the classroom, like, are you listening to them? Are you helping them? If you can't help them, are you pushing them to resources? Like, I cannot be your therapist. I had to make that really clear. Like, today we're talking about literacy. We're talking about theme today because your kids weren't understanding theme. I can't talk about this. However, here are some, these are some district resources for mental health that, this is provided free, this hotline. And sometimes districts have those stuff. So a lot of times I think schools have to get better about, these are the resources. Here's the resources, and getting you to kind of share that resource. And then I would say circle back. If I sent you off on a resource, or I said, hey, like, I know a couple of teachers I've had who all were mad at me at the time, who are all okay. Like, one teacher I turned in for coming to work sick. I'm like, you need to go home. And the teacher was pissed. But when the teacher went home, the teacher's like, I'm so glad you made me go home, because like, I would have never gotten better coming into work like that. And you need people that's going to take care of you, because there's a fear. There's a real fear in some schools. Like, if I take off, if I do this, if I say this, there's going to be a consequence, because like, the school is fear driven. It's driven by fear of the principal, fear of getting written up, fear of getting non-renewed, fear of negative stuff being in your evaluation. So thinking about that, thinking about coaching, can you talk about any type of coaching or mentorship that you received in your career that you felt that was helpful, that it would help teachers stay in the classroom?
I mean, I think the biggest thing for me My supervising teacher actually is the person that I talk to the most about things that I'm going through ed-wise. So like I obviously that was in 2014, I believe. Yeah, when I did student teaching with her. But she's probably one of the most amazing teachers like I've ever seen. Like that's who I basically emulate when I'm teaching. Like I think about all the things she had me do when I was her student teacher and just the way she just could think on the spot with anything. Like it was great. So as far as the advice that I get from her, like she has told me time and time again to speak up. Like she's very vocal at her school, and they all respect her for that. With me, it's not that I had some sort of it's not like I was told. I think people did want me to speak up. Like I do think admin wanted me to say more. I just muted myself. And the reason why I did that and why I was so frustrated is because I didn't feel like teachers were going to listen, or a lot of those teachers were stuck in their old ways. And that was frustrating for me to see. And then I get some of those kids who had gone through that same cycle over and over again. And then me trying to love up on them and get them to trust and love school and change and undo all these things. It was frustrating. So it's just like, I'm just going to do what I need to do in my classroom, as opposed to, me being vocal and saying, hey, we really need to do this. So yes, like there were times that my principal did push me out of my comfort zone. And I did appreciate that, even though I was mad in the moment, like putting me on the cultural responsive team. I'm like, you only put me on here because I'm Black. Like, and even though that may have some truth to it, she also knew that there were things that were valuable that I could add, or she knew that there were things that I was doing in my classroom that I could have said. And I didn't. I shut myself off in a box. Like what magic happens in my classroom is going to stay in my classroom. And so what I would always tell my mentor teacher, or my old supervising teacher, whatever you want to call her, she always advocated for me to like say something. Diamond, it's okay to share. It's okay to do this. It's okay. And I just didn't. So that's something that I definitely want to make sure that I allow the teachers I'm going to work with to do, is make sure that they do share, or kind of push them out of that comfort zone to share, because I know how valuable it can be. Like even doing this right now, like I normally wouldn't disclose anything. So this is a lot for me, but I know that it's good because it's going to help somebody else. So I would do the same thing with the teachers that I'd be working with. And it's nice because the group of teachers that I'm actually going to be working with are all new teachers. So they'll be first years.
No, I think you were hitting something on because I remember when you told me you were on a committee, you were not happy.
I was not. I was like, that's just not Black. I know it.
I was doing my thing where I was letting you vent, and I remember saying something, but you're doing some stuff that those other teachers need to be doing. And I said that, and you were like, well, and I said, well, no. I said, there's a reason that you're on this committee outside of just being Black. There's things that are happening. Like, I think about when I was co-teaching with you, I would go co-teach with other people. You were the class I was excited to go in and co-teach. Other classes, either A, they didn't really want me talking in the classroom, which is not co-teaching. Right. Oh, just take those kids out of class. You like, come on in.
Right, please.
I'm in there. You let me write on the board. And this is little things. You let me write on the board. You let me talk. And there were classrooms I was in, they wouldn't even want me to talk. If I even whisper to a kid, oh, can you take them back to your room because you being too loud? I'm over here whispering because the kid don't have no clue what you're talking about. And I like what you said, like having a principal that push you, because I think about if you have a Black principal and they're the only, at first at my son's school, I'm like, oh, Black principal, there's a Black assistant principal. That was before my kids went there. And then I'm like, oh man, the Black assistant principal went. I know she went to be closer to her home. But you feel like, oh, maybe these things will happen and maybe these things will be lifted up, but it's hard to do it by yourself because I am so involved as a parent. I remember little things that the principal changed that I was like, why are people mad about it? Well, they used to do the Chinese festival, but now it's, all this multiculturalism. And I'm, at different people's houses in the community, like white parents and things. I'm just like, me as a Black parent, I'm like, yes, we're doing some things. Like I remember my son's coming home talking about, oh, we had these African dancers at school. So I'm excited about those things, but I also know like a principal can't do that alone. They need other teachers to speak up. And so you have a Black principal who is pushing you to speak up and they are protecting you from other people who may be resistant, I think that is a way to keep Black teachers in the classroom, but you have to get more Black administrators. I think that's one of the things we haven't really, I mean, we've been talking about having a Black principal, but I think that's important because like right now, my current principal is biracial. She's half Black and half white, but everybody else on the I'm the only person that identifies like as Black on the admin team. And so sometimes I get nervous. I get nervous about little things. I get nervous about interviewing candidates. I said, what if I'm the only person that has this viewpoint and no one else has it? Or what if I bring in a diverse candidate and they can't see the potential like I can see? And I worry about that. And those are the things I wouldn't have to worry about if I was in situation. I think about when I was a librarian, I was the only Black one in the district. When I was a E&L teacher, I was the only Black one in the district. There's been a couple of schools where I worked. I was the only Black English teacher in the school. And it's like exhausting when you're the only person. So it's like we were in a situation where the school didn't just hire one Black person. So that was great. So it's like, well, that's a solution. No, just hire one, be intentional, but because these Black folks and you get all these Black folks together, you have to make it a situation in with where they can thrive. And then, I mean, you know this, some people were just like, oh, because I remember I got accused of my schedule, of putting you in my schedule more because you were Black and I wanted to work with you. Now, first of all, you being Black had nothing to do with it. I wanted to work with you because you were teaching. But the fact that I had to pull out the data of the kids in your classroom to show people that my time should be in your room versus these other classrooms because they didn't have the need, those are the things where I felt like I shouldn't have had to have that conversation. That's when the principal's like, no, I hired Shantae because of her expertise. Shantae knows what she's doing. I trust her to look at data and manage her time appropriately. And if I have a problem with what Shantae's doing, I will address it. You don't need to address it. And so it's those little things where if you're in schools and you don't feel protected and you feel like people can say whatever, whatever, question your intelligence, question if you're just an affirmative action hire and nothing is ever done about it, it's just so exhausting. And you're just like, chuck the deuce, I'm out. Let me go somewhere else. The grass may not be greener, but at least I can start from scratch and try to push through. I'm at this other school. I know our time is starting to wrap up. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to say about this topic of why teachers leave the classroom and how to get them to stay?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely, like I've been kind of repeating, take care of yourself first. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to leave, but doesn't necessarily mean you have to stay either. I want teachers to know that they do have options. I feel like that's something we don't discuss enough, is that you have an option. So don't feel like, especially if you're someone that's like, you're really not feeling it or you're resistant to the changes, like, and it's not for you, you can go. Like, it's okay. But at the same time, take time for yourself, know what it is that you want, what it is that you kind of want to fulfill from, or how you get fulfilled from teaching, to take care of yourself. So, yeah.
No, I definitely agree with the whole take care of yourself. And then sometimes it's not even the school. You just are not a match for that school.
Right.
Maybe the school has an initiative that you're not, if they're into right now, and they're like, I don't really, I don't like this STEM initiative they're doing. I don't want to incorporate science into my reading lessons. Then maybe you need to go to another school because they're not going to stop doing that because that's the initiative. And granted, every school has their initiative, so you better figure out one you like and just get with it. But maybe you do need to go somewhere else. And also just like reaching out, I say you have to have like friends or like a close network. So for me, one of the things I had to do was, because I have a hard time trusting people I work with, that is something I struggle with. And people know that. I always have people outside of work I trust that I talk to because I have a hard time. I've been, I don't want to say betrayed, but that kind of like what it feels like. I've been betrayed so many times that I'm like, you don't care about me. Like you're just, or they're trying to quote unquote get ahead. So I'm very, I told my current principal, I said, you will never hear me having dramas or issues because I'm just not going to say anything if they're going to be acting like that. And I said, they'll never be able to say Shantae said this because I'm not having it. And like I have filter conversations with people. And I want to get to a place where I don't feel like I have to do that. But I also I've become a realist, like education is the way it is. And I have to protect myself. Also trying to be part of change. So there's stuff I speak up about all the time, even if I'm the lone person, and people at my school can attest to that. So I still speak up, but I also manage my personal relationships at work, just to really keep them professional until I get to a point where I feel like, oh, I can really trust you. I know you do tutoring, and this is going to be a huge plug. I don't recommend anybody unless I feel strongly about it. And this lady right here tutors my own children. So if I let this person tutor my children, I'm telling you, it's on the up and up. And I will tell you, she did a better job of teaching division to my children than I did. And well, first of all, he's dividing without crying now. So mommy with tears, crying, anger, balled up papers, and then we get on to Zoom with Mrs. Malone-Gilbert. And it's so funny because my husband said he came skipping out of the room. Well, I'm like, what are you doing? Well, I'm like, I know you. So can you talk a little bit about the tutoring services you offer and maybe how much it costs?
Yeah, so right now I'm tutoring K through 5 students. It could be from anywhere, doesn't matter. Doing reading and math. As far as what I've been working with most of my kids, it's been interventions or just kind of filling in some of those gaps, like I said before. So I've been doing a lot of phonics, going back over that and doing some phonemic awareness things. We've been doing some read alouds, but anything you need, I can definitely customize for you and kind of work it out with you. I only charge $15 an hour. I do recommend at least a 1 hour session. But most of the people that I've been working with do at least 2 to 3 hours per week. So that might be 3 days, or 2 days, it might be 2 hours, and another day it's just 1 hour. But whatever you need, I'm here.
Yes, and I would say it's been high quality. And what I like, because what I failed to do, because like you guys know, everything I've talked about, librarian, English language learner, English teacher, that's all literacy based. Now, I did co-teach with Diamond with math, so I can do math, but I wasn't trained in how to maybe speak about math in a way that I can speak about literacy. So when my sons, both of them, I worked with her, they were able to come back and articulate and explain. And I wasn't doing a good job of getting them to explain the math. So for me, I was like, okay, this is working. So I strongly recommend. I feel like the rate is reasonable. And she got all kinds of stuff. Like he was like, oh, there's like a little Lego thing that popped up. Well, I mean, it's interactive. He was all excited, and I was like, man, you doing all this stuff. But I highly recommend it. So Diamond, it's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Yes.
Really appreciate you being willing, because I know I pulled you way out of your comfort zone today.
You did, but I appreciate it. Growth. That's what we're looking for.
But I will say, one of my mentors that's older than me, one of the things that's kind of released me for a lot of stuff is being more transparent and telling my story. Mm-hmm. And the more I've told my story, the more I hear, like, you said this, like, I said something one time and it got a lady to move across state to take this teaching job. Now, I didn't tell nobody to move, but she was saying what you were saying about looking out for yourself made me do this. And so you just never know how sharing your story will impact someone. So I'm hoping, I already know. I know that people are going to listen to this and going to be inspired to figure out, like, if they should stay or if they should go. And I hope administrators are listening to this and really taking to consideration some of the things that we talked about that makes it difficult for educators to stay, especially Black educators. So guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll chat with you later.